She got that sweet juice, Minute Maid, summer vibe, that lemonade. Take a sip, blowing purple clouds, taste like lemon haze. Conversations back and forth like damn, we could go on for days. Looking back at it like damn, she bad when she walk away. Here we go, been down this road, they already know. When we go on tour, I'll take you anywhere you wanna go. People talk about us like they understand just what this is. I just wanna give you all you want and then the double it. They all say I'm way too young, maybe I'm just ignorant. I won't find nobody like you on some real shit. Spend a couple hours on the phone, hey. I don't wanna let you go, I'll be all about you, babe. I'll be all about you, babe. Saying so unless you don't know, they won't find what we got and that gon' drive me crazy. No need to rush, I'ma still be here tomorrow.
Live from Sacred Death Studios in Los Santos, San Andreas. Welcome everyone to Late-Night Counter-Apologetics. And now, please welcome your host. He is the wise man of the Sacred Death Motorcycle Club. He is the sexiest man in all of word wrestling entertainment. He is the most entertaining man in the history of evolutionary biology. He is the virtual visionary, Mr. Dual PhD himself. Please give it up for the architect of the atheist apocalypse, the only man to have his vestments blessed by Pine Creek, the most high apostle of the cult of the flying man. He is none other than the outlaw prince, the one and only Jesus who can save us, Dr. Heartbreak J. Pocketlocker Bundy.
As you can see, we've had our eye on you for some time.
What the fuck is
I don't believe for one second that I am the only one smart enough to pick up the Bible and figure out that we're not supposed to mourn
Hitchens
when
tonight?
homosexuals die.
One of these lives has a future, and one of them does not.
So what?
So let's just do a quick check. Let's make sure that none of our Bibles have been tampered with.
I just take pleasure in their death. God has darkened their heart and blinded their eyes.
Blinded their
If God
eyes.
darkens your heart and blinds your eyes, you can't believe.
You can't believe.
Washing our feet in the blood of the wicked in the New Testament. I'm starting to just realize the uncomfortable truth. Who here really struggles hard to be a homo? I mean, it's really hard. And you know what? These people are going to be burning in hell for all eternity. The victory is theirs. It's not ours. They've already won. We've already lost. It's already been written. We've already read the last chapter. And we know
I don't love God.
you have lost your mind. Homosexuality should be a crime. They ought to take all the homosexuals and put them all on a boat and give them enough gas to get halfway out in the middle of the ocean and let the sharks eat them. So there's no way to stop me. There's no way to stop the truth. This isn't preaching, this is hate speech. It's both! Because we can purge out all the sissies and purge out all the fair weather Christians, purge out all the weaklings. Because we're supposed to be treating them lovingly and respectfully. Even though the Bible says they're filthy and vile. I mean, I know some of you guys are enjoying it. So don't act like I'm all alone up here. Some of you thumbed up some of those comments too, didn't you? I'm just saying, look, you know, hey.
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look I got the moves that really move 'em. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Are you watching me? I make them shiver. Their knees get weak whenever I'm around. They see me walk, they hear me talk. I make them feel like they're on cloud nine. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Let's go! Eat your heart out, girls. Hands off the merchandise. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Welcome, everybody. We are about to spend some time with my main man, Christopher Hitchens. Oh, but folks, what a great, tremendous weekend it has been. 3 shows in one day, 3 different outfits, and I am still going because I cannot be stopped because I am taking over the internet. How many times do I have to tell people? Listen, folks, the whole crew is here. Sam's here. The Refiner's Fire's here. Liberty Bell, the beautiful U.S. Championship is here. The tambourines are here. The blam blams are here. Folks. Oh my goodness, the golden mirror is here. Oh, that man is looking so fine today. Oh. It makes the chains look right. Make sure the chains look good. Na na. I make them say, na. All right, folks, listen, we're going to get right to it because we got a lot of things to do. So basically, what I would like to share with you on today is in fact all about, hang on. I noticed something about this little screen share I've got going on back here. It's not exactly what we'd like to be there. That is, there you go. This one right over here. That's great. Folks, I'm not going to waste any time today. I want to get right to things. So let's switch you guys on over to this other scene over here. Let's make sure we've got everything all like we want it to. Oh, that looks lovely. I'm going to go ahead, now that I've done my intro, I'm going to go ahead and switch on over to my other machine where I've got Christopher Hitchens waiting in the lobby, so to speak, ready to call in the program with his fine words. Folks, when you see me drop this airplane mode in the chat, when you put in that exclamation point mode, folks, I need you to know it's not a game. It's not a thing we just made up, all right? Airplane mode is my cousin OG Roddy's music and merch brand, and he has just released some new music. And so before we get started, we're going to have a very special communion time, and we're going to listen to the brand new official song of my openings, the brand new official airplane mode anthem called Stunt 102. Okay, folks? So, before we get into it, let's go ahead and do what we've got to do. Please, please, please hold on to your asses and raise your glasses. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours, Almighty, who flied for our sins forever and ever. Alrighty then. Please, folks, you may get your drink on.
Ready for PayPaul?
Whoa. Working hard on my stump, what's the problem? I ain't had shit to show, being modest. Now it's grams of the wax for my conscience. Brian James in LA, you're on college. I've been jumping on them planes like a hobby. Still moving with the pack like my partners. Put the John on them jets cause we wild. Party on the island, moment of silence. So good, get back to the topic. Grew up, it was me and Flocka. Grandma's and Big T, this my mama. I ain't even for the pain when my pots flip. Knew his name, that's it, never bothered. Mom said, you the man, son, you got this. Ever since I found a way to go and pop shit. Hold up, blaze through a whole zip. Took a seat at the table of my first flip. Days in red roof with my first whip. Spent the money with the gang, never post pics. Seen a change in the game, had to coach it. Never let them take my wangs in the mold, bitch. Ever made in a month, nigga. Used to serve him at the minute just to front, nigga. Goddamn. Had to grow up quick, I made my own rules. Had my first child, got it jumping with music. Can't really hang with nobody who losing. I thought by now that you would go and get it, but I could hardly see niggas this distant. Know you get cropped if you not in the picture. And I made that tag and went got a bag. Shots to the Henny and OG prescriptions, put rebel shit on the map. Took a leap from where I started at. Started ballin' now I'm Chris Paul and Cats. Got him steady calling for the mold, but I'm on a roll, gotta call him back. And that's all fact.
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. All carry-on items should now be stowed securely, either in an overhead bin or under the seat in front of you. All aisles, exits, and bulkhead areas should now be clear. All electronic devices should now be turned off and stowed, as they may interfere with the aircraft's navigational and communication systems. Once airborne, we'll let you know when you may use approved electronic devices, but note that some items may not be used at any time during the flight.
Such a great record. All right, and here's one we gonna close them out with sometimes. Yeah, it's called Going Gone. Fucking fire, fucking fire. Let's go, No Name. No Name is in airplane mode. Let's go. Dr. Don G's in airplane mode. Multi-platform bonus.
I remember my nigga, he caught a case on a run on the low.
I said, are you watching me? The question is, are you watching me twice?
I wish I could have stayed in from all the drama. Rare roof, we was really there getting money. This ain't with the place where the rain or sunny. Know my niggas gonna catch me, I ever stumble. Know my team gonna pick up, I ever fumble. Niggas ain't winning, they really punt. You seen that location, we coming, so we loud guard of your niggas. We stayed 100 if you been on my block when we kept it coming. The plane cause I carry a lot of weight. FaceTime with my baby, make sure we straight. Breakfast with able to start my day. Chop it with Henny and talk with A. Yo, we crack, it's my dog and we get it back. Champion sound taking devil crash. And somehow I still go when I get the cash. But it ain't never been about the bag. I've been dipping in fashion, I'm about to spaz. Latest release like the sneakers app. So that don't worth more if you sell it fast.
No Name, feel free to call in. Feel free to get in the studio.
You did off rap. Yeah.
I'm in that restraint.
And I ain't even had to mention my DJ Sass. Yeah. I'm gone. Said I'm gone.
I said I'm gone. Said I'm gone.
I said
I'm gone.
I said I'm gone.
I said I'm gone.
I said I'm gone. Said I'm gone. Yeah.
Been going and going, and shit got my main line going crazy. Going, I've been moving strong, remember they tryna play me. Said I'm wasting money doing all these songs, ain't nobody gon' play them. Now a couple months, I don't drop a tape, niggas be like we waiting. You cannot find me in Roddy, we just touching down to Miami. The way the police got these niggas on records, they all need a Grammy. It's all for the family, told my daughter how I'ma call when I'm landing. It's all in the plan, your circle gets smaller when you start expanding. Go. Where we came from, that shit made us so heartless. Fuck what they talking, I do me regardless. I'm not pulling up there without a deposit. At all. Run my money. Pull up with gang, I'ma pull up with goblins. They put in work, but them niggas is jobless.
Check out that Late-Night Counter-Apologetics on Jay Bundy.
Niggas expired, I feel like I'm timeless.
Last night we went at Rebecca. Why is she searching for lies? We murdered it. Today on Hot Program. On the Hot Program YouTube channel with MyOneBlack Friend. We emailed Staten. Is he gonna leave Christianity? Find out. We murdered it. And now it's time for that audiobook commentary with Christopher Hitchens. You should already know what I'm about to do. Let's go.
I'm getting the vibe back. You know. Feel like I'm going through.
Some of y'all not on Discord. I need to be the reason you get on Discord.
I need sun and palm trees, man.
Discord is live. We don't tell you that for no reason. We trying to hook you up. All right, y'all. Look. The shit is a banger. Obviously, it's fire. This is my cousin's music. Go over there, buy the music. I'm sure you'll be able to buy the music. I would say buy the merchandise, but my honest advice is try to buy the merchandise because he designs the shit himself and it sells out all the time because it's fire. So like I said, try to buy the merchandise, but if you can't, please don't blame me because I tried to warn you. I had a hard time getting the shit myself. He got to send me my shit. I was like, yo, you got to send me the shit because I can't find the shit. Because I'm trying to send you my money and I can't. It's crazy. Folks, it's about to get awesome. All right, here we go. It's time for some Christopher Hitchens, and it's gonna be trippy and cool as fuck. Why? Because this is my motherfucking studio, and I've been grinding all week, and it's time to have some fun. Oh, you like the way I sing? Don't say yes, because then you'll encourage me. Don't say no. Say boo. Everybody put boos in the chat. All right, y'all. I ain't even trying to front. The shit got me so trippy. I can't even. I literally couldn't find the mouse. I wasn't even trying to make it shit suspenseful. I literally wasn't trying to kill time. All right, here we go. Boom. Let's get it. Let's go. Yup. Y'all know that's a bop. Y'all know that shit sound good. Yup.
Chapter 6.
That was fire. Y'all know that was fire.
From Design.
Don't lie.
All my moral and intellectual being is penetrated by an invincible conviction.
Penetrated.
That whatever falls under the dominion of our senses must be in nature and, however exceptional, cannot differ in its essence from all the other effects of the visible and tangible world of which we are a self-conscious part. The world of the living contains enough marvels and mysteries as it is. Marvels and mysteries acting upon our emotions and intelligence in ways so inexplicable that it would almost justify the conception of life as an enchanted state. No, I am too firm in my consciousness of the marvellous to be ever fascinated by the mere supernatural, which, take it any way you like, is but a manufactured article, the fabrication of minds insensitive to the intimate delicacies of our relation to the dead and to the living in their countless multitudes, a desecration of our tenderest memories, an outrage on our dignity. Joseph Conrad, author's note to The Shadow Line. There is a central paradox at the core of religion. The three great monotheisms teach people to think abjectly of themselves, as miserable and guilty sinners prostrate before an angry and jealous God who, according to discrepant accounts, fashioned them either out of dust and clay or a clot of blood. The positions for prayer are usually emulations of the supplicant serf before an ill-tempered monarch. The message is one of continual submission, gratitude, and fear. Life itself is a poor thing, an interval in which to prepare for the hereafter, or for the coming or second coming of the Messiah. On the other hand, and as if by way of compensation, religion teaches people to be extremely self-centered and conceited. It assures them that God cares for them individually, and it claims that the cosmos was created with them specifically in mind. This explains the supercilious expression on the faces of those who practice religion ostentatiously. Pray excuse my modesty and humility, but I happen to be busy on an errand for God. Since human beings are naturally solipsistic, all forms of superstition enjoy what might be called a natural advantage. In the United States, we exert ourselves to improve high-rise buildings and high-speed jet aircraft, the two achievements that the murderers of September 11, 2001 put into hostile apposition, and then pathetically refuse to give them floors or row numbers that carry the unimportant number 13. I know that Pythagoras refuted astrology by the simple means of pointing out that identical twins do not have the same future. I further know that the zodiac was drawn up long before several of the planets in our solar system had been detected, and of course I understand that I could not be shown my immediate or long-term future without this disclosure altering the outcome. Thousands of people consult their stars in the newspapers every day and then have unpredicted heart attacks or traffic accidents. An astrologer, on a London tabloid, was once fired by means of a letter from his editor which began, "As you will no doubt have foreseen." In his Minima Moralia, Theodor Adorno identified the interest in stargazing as the consummation of feeble-mindedness.
Seriously.
However, happening to glance at the projected situation for Aries one morning, as I once did, to be told that a member of the opposite sex is interested and will show it, I found it hard to suppress a tiny surge of idiotic excitement, which in my memory has outlived the later disappointment. Then again, every time I leave my apartment, there is no sign of a bus, whereas every time I return to it, a bus is just drawing up. In bad moods I mutter, "just my luck" to myself, even though part of my small 2 or 3 pound brain reminds me that the mass transit schedule of Washington, D.C. is drawn up and implemented without any reference to my movements. I mention this in case it might later become important. If I am hit by a bus on the day this book is published,
no worries, man.
there will certainly be people who will say
let me make sure I keep
accident.
the restream open back here in case you...
So why should I not be tempted to overrule W.H. Auden and believe that the firmament is in some mysterious way ordered for my benefit? Or, coming down by a few orders of magnitude, that fluctuations in my personal fortunes are of absorbing interest to a supreme being? One of the many faults in my design is my propensity to believe or to wish this, and though, like many people, I have enough education to see through the fallacy, I have to admit that it is innate. In Sri Lanka once, I was travelling in a car with a group of Tamils on a relief expedition to a Tamil area of the coastline that had been hard hit by a cyclone. My companions were all members of the Sai Baba sect, which is very strong in South India and Sri Lanka. Sai Baba himself has claimed to raise the dead and makes a special on-camera performance of producing holy ash from his bare palms. Why ash, I used to wonder. Anyway, the trip began with my friends breaking some coconuts on a rock to ensure a safe journey. This evidently did not work because halfway across the island, our driver ploughed straight into a man who staggered out in front of us as we were...
This makes me think about Ash Wednesday and how seriously I used to take it, but now when I see it, I just go, man, it's so weird that all these people just think it's totally normal to just be like, yeah, oh cool, where'd you get that ash cross on your forehead? Like, oh yeah, it's Jesus, it's just so weird that we literally take that for granted. It's like, oh yeah, totally, the Jewish blood magic, yeah, gotcha. All right, cool. Want to go grab a sandwich? It's just kind of odd to me these days.
Were racing too fast through a village. The man was horribly injured and, this being a Sinhala village, the crowd that instantly gathered was not well disposed to these Tamil intruders. It was a very sticky situation, but I was able to defuse it somewhat by being an Englishman wearing an off-white Graham-Greene type suit and by having press credentials that had been issued by the London Metropolitan Police. This impressed the local cop enough to have us temporarily released, and my companions, who had been very scared indeed, were more than grateful for my presence and for my ability to talk fast. In fact, they telephoned their cult headquarters to announce that Sai Baba himself had been with us, in the temporary shape of my own person. From then on, I was treated literally with reverence, and not allowed to carry anything or fetch my own food. It did occur to me meanwhile to check on the man we had run over. He had died of his injuries in hospital. I wonder what his horoscope had foreshadowed for that day. Thus, in miniature, I saw how one mere human mammal, myself, can suddenly begin to attract shy glances of awe and wonder, and how another human mammal, our luckless victim, could be somehow irrelevant to Sai Baba's benign design. There but for the grace of God, said John Bradford in the 16th century, on seeing wretches led to execution, go I. What this apparently compassionate observation really means, not that it really means anything, is, there by the grace of God goes someone else. As I was writing this chapter, a heart-stopping accident took place in a coal mine in West Virginia. 13 miners survived the explosion, but were trapped underground, compelling the nation's attention for a whole fraught news cycle until with huge relief it was announced that they had been located safe and sound. These glad tidings turned out to be premature, which was an impossible additional anguish for the families, who had already begun celebrating and giving thanks before discovering that all but one of their menfolk had suffocated under the rock. It was also an embarrassment to the newspapers and news bulletins that had rushed out too soon with the false consolation. And can you guess what the headline on those newspapers and bulletins had been? Of course you can. Miracle, with or without the exclamation point, was the invariable choice, surviving mockingly in print and in the memory to intensify the grief of the relatives. There doesn't seem to be a word to describe the absence of divine intervention in this case. But the human wish to credit good things as miraculous and to charge bad things to another account is apparently universal. In England, the monarch is the hereditary head of the church as well as the hereditary head of the state. William Cobbett once pointed out that the English themselves colluded in this servile absurdity by referring to the royal mint but the national debt.
It's so interesting to me that people still, think it's perfectly normal to be ruled, right? Like whether by like some sort of earthly principality, like it's just, the whole thing is very odd to me. And it's also definitely part of the religious ideology that, especially in America, that I don't think is challenged enough. I don't think we say enough strongly enough about just how badly you have to want to serve this master, this idea of a lord. Like the very term itself to me is anti-libertarian.
Religion plays the same trick and in the same way and before our very eyes. On my first visit to the Sacré-Cœur in Montmartre, a church that was built to celebrate the deliverance of Paris from the Prussians and the Commune of 1870 to 1871, I saw a panel in bronze which showed the exact pattern in which a shower of Allied bombs, dropped in 1944, had missed the church and burst in the adjoining neighbourhood. Given this overwhelming tendency to stupidity and selfishness in myself and among our species, it is somewhat surprising to find the light of reason penetrating at all. The brilliant Schiller was wrong in his Joan of Arc when he said that, against stupidity the gods themselves contend in vain. It is actually by means of the gods that we make our stupidity and gullibility into something ineffable. The design arguments which are products of this same solipsism take two forms, the macro and the micro. They were most famously summarized by William Paley, whose dates are 1743 to 1805, in his book Natural Philosophy. Here we encounter the homespun example of the primitive human who stumbles across a ticking watch. He may not know what it is for, but he can discern that it is not a rock or a vegetable, and that it has been manufactured, and even manufactured for some purpose. Paley wanted to extend this analogy both to nature and to man. His complacency and wrong-headedness are well caught by J.G. Farrell in his portrait of a Paley-trained Victorian divine in The Siege of Krishnapur. How do you explain the subtle mechanism of the eye, infinitely more complex than the mere telescope that miserable humanity has been able to invent? How do you explain the eel's eye, which might be damaged by burrowing into mud and stones, and is therefore protected by a transparent horny covering? How is it that the iris of a fish's eye does not contract? Ah, poor misguided youth, it is because the fish's eye has been designed by him who is above all, to suit the dim light in which the fish makes his watery dwelling. How do you explain the Indian hog? He cried. How do you account for its two bent teeth, more than a yard long, growing upwards from its upper jaw? To defend itself? No, young man, it has two tusks for that purpose, issuing from the lower jaw like those of a common boar. No, the answer is that the animal sleeps standing up, and, in order to support its head, it hooks its upper tusks on the branches of the trees, for the designer of the world has given thought even to the hog's slumbers. Paley did not bother to explain how the designer of the world came to command so many of his human creatures to treat the said hog as if it were a demon or a leper.
Oh, hang on.
In fact, surveying the natural order, John Stuart Mill was found.
No Name, is that you? Am I hearing things? Why did I think I heard? Okay, hang on. I'm going to the wrong window. Oh, it's not you? All right, never mind. Yeah, I'm probably hearing shit.
The mark when he wrote, "If a 10th part of the pains taken in finding signs of an all-powerful benevolent God had been employed in collecting evidence to blacken the Creator's character, what scope would not have been found in the animal kingdom? It is divided into devourers and devoured, most creatures being lavishly fitted with instruments to torment their prey." Now that the courts have protected Americans, at least for the moment, from the inculcation of compulsory creationist stupidity in the classroom, we can echo that other great Victorian Lord Macaulay and say that every schoolchild knows that Paley had put his creaking, leaking cart in front of his wheezing and broken-down old horse. Fish do not have fins because they need them for the water, any more than birds are equipped with wings so that they can meet the dictionary definition of an avian. Apart from anything else, there are too many flightless species of birds.
I was like, why have we heard this before? I was like, oh yeah, it's because we started this one.
Let no one doubt the power of the original illusion. Whittaker Chambers, in his seismic book Witness, recounts the first moment when he abandoned historical materialism, mentally deserted the communist cause, and embarked on the career which would undo Stalinism in America. It was on the morning when he glimpsed the ear of his baby daughter. The pretty walls and folds of this external organ persuaded him, in a flash of revelation, that no coincidence could have created it. A fleshly flap of such utter beauty must be divine. Well, I too have marvelled at the sweet little ears of my female offspring, but never without noticing that A, they always need a bit of a clean-out, B, that they look mass-produced even when set against the inferior ears of other people's daughters, C, that as people get older their ears look more and more absurd from behind, and D, that much lower animals, such as cats and bats, have much more fascinating and lovely and more potent ears. To echo Laplace, in fact, I would say that there are many, many persuasive arguments against Stalin worship, but that the anti-Stalin case is fully valid without Mr. Chambers' ear-flap-based assumption. Ears are predictable and uniform, and their flaps are every bit as adorable when the child has been born stone-deaf. The same is not true in the same sense of the universe. Here there are anomalies and mysteries and imperfections, to use the most minimal terms, that do not even show adaptation, let alone selection. Thomas Jefferson in old age was fond of the analogy of the timepiece in his own case, and would write to friends who inquired after his health that the odd spring was breaking and the occasional wheel wearing out. This, of course, raises the uncomfortable, for believers, idea of the built-in fault that no repairman can fix. Should this be counted as part of the design as well? As usual, those who take the credit for the one will fall silent and start shuffling when it comes to the other side of the ledger. But when it comes to the whirling, howling wilderness of outer space, with its red giants and white dwarfs and black holes, its titanic explosions and extinctions, we can only dimly and shiveringly conclude that the design hasn't been imposed quite yet, and wonder if this is how dinosaurs felt when the meteors came smashing through the Earth's atmosphere and put an end to the pointless, bellowing rivalry across primeval swamps. Even what was first known about the comparatively consoling symmetry of the solar system, with its nonetheless evident tendency to instability and entropy, upset Sir Isaac Newton enough to make him propose that God intervened every now and then to put the orbits back on an even keel. This exposed him to teasing from Leibniz, who asked why God couldn't have got it working right the first time around. It is indeed only because of the frightening emptiness elsewhere that we are bound to be impressed by the apparently unique and beautiful conditions that have allowed intelligent life to occur on Earth. But then, vain as we are, we would be impressed, wouldn't we? This vanity allows us to overlook the implacable fact that, of the other bodies in our own solar system alone, the rest are all either far too cold to support anything recognizable as life, or far too hot. The same, as it happens, is true of our own blue and rounded planetary home, where heat contends with cold to make large tracts of it into useless wasteland, and where we have come to learn that we live, and have always lived, on a climatic knife edge. Meanwhile, the sun is getting ready to explode and devour its dependent planets like some jealous chief or tribal deity. Some design. So much for the macro dimension. What of the micro? Ever since they were forced to take part in this argument, which they were with great reluctance, the religious have tried to echo Hamlet's admonition to Horatio, that there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of by mere humans.
And there's nothing you can do
Our
about
side
it.
willingly concedes this point. We're prepared for discoveries in the future that will stagger our faculties even more than the vast advances in knowledge that have come to us since Darwin and Einstein. However, these discoveries will come to us in the same way, by means of patient and scrupulous, and this time we hope unfettered, inquiry. In the meanwhile, we also have to improve our minds by the laborious exercise of refuting the latest foolishness contrived by the faithful. When the bones of prehistoric animals began to be discovered and scrutinized in the 19th century, there were those who said that the fossils had been placed in the rock by God in order to test our faith. This cannot be disproved. Nor can my own pet theory that, from the patterns of behavior that are observable...
Somebody actually said that to me. I was selling a guy a car when I was leaving Penn State to come to Michigan State, essentially. And the guy, you know, he was talking to me about what I do, and so I told him, you know, I was a biological anthropologist at the time, and, you know, what I studied, that I studied human evolution or whatever, and then he was like, oh, you believe in that stuff? And so when I asked him about fossils, that's what he told me. He said he thought God put them there as a test of our faith. And I remember I was still a Christian at the time, and it just really bothered me that he was suggesting that God had, you know, done all this as some sort of trick.
We may infer a design that makes planet Earth, all unknown to us, a prison colony and lunatic asylum that is employed as a dumping ground by far-off and superior civilizations. However, I was educated by Sir Karl Popper to believe that a theory that is unfalsifiable is to that extent a weak one.
Don't worry about it.
Now we are being told that astonishing features such as the human eye cannot be the result of, so to speak, blind chance.
Up this week.
As it happens, the design faction have chosen an example that could not be bettered.
I have
we now know a great deal about
into it, so
and about which creatures have it and which do not, and why.
It.
I must here for a moment give way to my friend Dr. Michael Shermer. Evolution also posits that modern organisms should show a variety of structures from simple to complex, reflecting an evolutionary history rather than an instantaneous creation. The human eye, for example, is the result of a long and complex pathway that goes back hundreds of millions of years. Initially a simple eye spot with a handful of light-sensitive cells that provided information to the organism about an important source of the light, it developed into a recessed eye spot, where a small surface indentation filled with light-sensitive cells provided additional data on the direction of light. then into a deep recession eye spot, where additional cells at greater depth provide more accurate information about the environment, then into a pinhole camera eye that is able to focus an image on the back of a deeply recessed layer of light-sensitive cells, then into a pinhole lens eye that is able to focus the image, then into a complex eye, found in such modern mammals as humans. All the intermediate stages of this process have been located in other creatures, and sophisticated computer models have been developed which have tested the theory and shown that it actually works. There is a further proof of the evolution of the eye, as Sharma points out. This is the ineptitude of its design. The anatomy of the human eye, in fact, shows anything but intelligence in its design. It is built upside down and backwards, requiring photons of light to travel through the cornea, lens, aqueous fluid, blood vessels, ganglion cells, amacrine cells, horizontal cells, and bipolar cells before they reach the light-sensitive rods and cones that transduce the light signal into neural impulses, which are then sent to the visual cortex at the back of the brain for processing into meaningful patterns. For optimal vision, why would an intelligent designer have built an eye upside down and backwards? It is because we evolved from sightless bacteria, now found to share our DNA, that we are so myopic. These are the same ill-designed optics, complete with deliberately designed retinal blind spot, through which earlier humans claimed to have seen miracles with their own eyes. The problem in those cases was located elsewhere in the cortex, but we must never forget Charles Darwin's injunction that even the most highly evolved of us will continue to carry the indelible stamp of their lowly origin. I would add to Shermer that though it is true we are the highest and smartest animals, ospreys have eyes we have calculated to be 60 times more powerful and sophisticated than our own, and that blindness, often caused by microscopic parasites that are themselves miracles of ingenuity, is one of the oldest and most tragic disorders known to man. And why award the superior eye, or, in the case of the cat or bat, also the ear, to the inferior species? The osprey can swoop accurately on a fast-moving fish that it has detected underwater from many, many feet above, all the while manoeuvring with its extraordinary wings. Ospreys have almost been exterminated by man, while you yourself can be born as blind as a worm and still become a pious and observant Methodist, for example. To suppose that the eye, wrote Charles Darwin, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. He wrote this in an essay entitled Organs of Extreme Perfection and Complication. Since that time, the evolution of the eye has become almost a separate department of study. And why should it not? It is immensely fascinating and rewarding to know that at least 40 different sets of eyes, and possibly 60 different sets, have evolved in quite distinct and parallel, if comparable, ways. Dr. Daniel Nielsen, perhaps the foremost authority on the subject, has found, among other things, that 3 entirely different groups of fish have independently developed 4 eyes. One of these sea creatures, Bathylicnops exilis, possesses a pair of eyes that look outward, and another pair of eyes, set in the wall of the main 2, that direct their gaze straight downward. This would be an encumbrance to most animals, but it has some obvious advantages for an aquatic one. And it is highly important to notice that the embryological development of the second set of eyes is not a copy or a miniature of the first set, but an entirely different evolution. As Dr. Nielsen puts it in a letter to Richard Dawkins, this species has reinvented the lens despite the fact that it already had one. It serves as a good support for the view that lenses are not difficult to evolve. A creative deity, of course, would have been more likely to double the complement of optics in the first place, which would have left us with nothing to wonder about or to discover. Or, as Darwin went on to say in the same essay, when it was first said that the sun stood still and the world turned round, the common sense of mankind declared the doctrine false. But the old saying of vox populi vox Dei, as every philosopher knows, cannot be trusted in science. Reason tells me that, if numerous gradations from an imperfect and simple eye to one perfect and complex, each grade being useful to its possessor, can be shown to exist, as is certainly the case, if, further, the eye ever slightly varies, and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if...
There's a really good point here, too, because I feel like so many, especially like the creationist crowd, it's like there's no amount of evidence that will actually persuade them. Because if there was, they'd be persuaded already. And so to meet this constant demand and sort of, all the cliches about, oh, well, I haven't seen this, or I believe in micro but not macro, but you haven't seen this turn into this thing, or whatever it is. One of the things that strikes me about some of these content creators on the theist side is just like, they're so dogmatically anti-scientific, yet they're trying to use science to gain their credibility. And I just wonder where they get the audacity from sometimes, I guess.
If such variations should ever be useful to any animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, cannot be considered real. We may smile slightly when we notice that Darwin wrote of the sun standing still and when we notice that he spoke of the eye's perfection, but only because we are fortunate enough to know more than he did. What is worth noting and retaining is his proper use of the sense of what is wondrous. The real miracle is that we, who share genes with the original bacteria that began life on the planet, have evolved as much as we have. Other creatures did not develop eyes at all.
Yeah, deader inside helps. Well, the thing that I think helps is, if you get it, it's just kind of like, well, it's a box. It's a box with a signal, so, don't get too frustrated at it because it won't give anything back. But yeah, we can help other people. I don't have any guests or anything on today. I don't know that anybody's calling in. If somebody wants to call in, let me know. I'll drop the link. But yeah, I think it's okay. No worries, man. Take your time and just let me know how it goes.
At all, or developed extremely weak ones. There is an intriguing paradox here. Evolution does not have eyes, but it can create them. The brilliant Professor Francis Crick, one of the discoverers of the double helix, had a colleague named Leslie Orgel who encapsulated this paradox more elegantly than I can. Evolution, he said, is smarter than you are. But this compliment to the intelligence of natural selection is not by any means a concession to the stupid notion of intelligent design. Some of the results are extremely impressive, as we are bound to think in our own case. What a piece of work is a man, as Hamlet exclaims, before going on to contradict himself somewhat by describing the result as a quintessence of dust, both statements having the merit of being true. But the process by which the results are attained is slow and infinitely laborious, and has given us a DNA string which is crowded with useless junk and which has much in common with much lower creatures. The stamp of the lowly origin is to be found in our appendix, in the now needless coat of hair that we still grow and then shed after 5 months in the womb, in our easily worn-out knees, our vestigial tails, and the many caprices of our urinogenital arrangements. Why do people keep saying God is in the details? He isn't in ours, unless his yokel creationist fans wish to take credit for his clumsiness, failure, and incompetence. Those who have yielded, not without a struggle, to the overwhelming evidence of evolution are now trying to award themselves a medal for their own acceptance of defeat. The very magnificence and variety of the process, they now wish to say, argues for a directing and originating mind. In this way they choose to make a fumbling fool of their pretended God, and make him out to be a tinkerer, an approximator, and a blunderer, who took eons of time to fashion a few serviceable figures, and heaped up a junkyard of failure and scrap meanwhile. Have they no more respect for the deity than that? They unwisely say that evolutionary biology is only a theory, which betrays their ignorance of the meaning of the word theory as well as of the meaning of the word design. A theory is something evolved, if you forgive the expression, to fit the known facts. It is a successful theory if it survives the introduction of hitherto unknown.
And this is the funny thing, like, that, again, is like... I try to let Chris go. I've done a lot of content this week, and I like to kick back and just celebrate his voice. But I do want to lend my support to certain things. It's just so interesting to me because, first off, this idea that evolution is just a theory is straight up wrong, right? Like, in that sense, gravity is just a theory. So when somebody says that, it's just really making it obvious that they don't understand what a scientific theory is. Now, that would be bad enough. Because trust me, that's really bad, right? Like when somebody says to you, like, oh, it's just a theory, like they're trying to equate it with an opinion. Like that's all right. I'm not even going to do that. There's plenty out there on that. But what's also terrible is that, and this is something we identified in this sort of examining evolution community. They're at the same time aspiring to present design as a scientific theory, but it's not, nor can it be. And so since it lacks any foundation in any sort of empirical anything, when they go, oh, well, evolution's just a theory, it's like, yeah, and intelligent design is not even a theory. And as far as theories go, again, would you think somebody reasonable who tried to undermine the legitimacy of something like the theory of gravity? No, because it's so foundational to science. Well, evolution finds itself in the same position, which is why I say, to me, people like this are essentially flat earthers. All right, folks, we're about halfway through this thing, and appreciate everybody's support. I want to just take a minute and say, there's been definitely a lot of changes happening behind the scenes. I've been grinding real hard. People have been worried about me. I appreciate that. I'm fine. I have been sleeping and eating, and I'll get some rest tonight in the next couple of days, and everything will be fine. But it's been worth it. It's definitely paid off. The streams have been so much fun and really enjoyable to do. So I appreciate all you guys. And if you want to support the stream any further, there are definitely links in the description. And with that, it is time for our offering song. Let's go. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy, put your money in the plate. Everybody sing it. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. Oh yeah. If you're happy, put your money in the plate. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it, if you're happy, put your money in the plate. Chops! Woo! All right. There we go.
And it becomes an accepted theory if it can make accurate predictions about things or events that have not yet been discovered or have not yet occurred. This can take time and is also subject to a version of Occam's procedure. Pharaonic astronomers in Egypt could predict eclipses, even though they believed the Earth to be flat. It just took them a great deal more unnecessary work. Einstein's prediction of the precise angular deflection of starlight due to gravity, verified during an eclipse off the west coast of Africa that occurred in 1913, was more elegant and was held to vindicate his theory of relativity. There are many disputes between evolutionists as to how the complex process occurred, and indeed as to how it began. Francis Crick even allowed himself to flirt with the theory that life was inseminated on Earth by bacteria spread from a passing comet. However, all these disputes, when or if they are resolved, will be resolved by using the scientific and experimental methods that have proven themselves so far. By contrast, creationism, or intelligent design, its only cleverness being found in this underhanded rebranding of itself, is not even a theory. In all its well-financed propaganda, it has never even attempted to show how one single piece of the natural world is explained better by design than by evolutionary competition. Instead, it dissolves into puerile tautology. One of the creationists' questionnaires purports to be a yes-no interrogation of the following. Do you know of any building that didn't have a builder? Do you know of any painting that didn't have a painter? Do you know of any car that didn't have a maker? If you answered yes for any of the above, give details. We know the answer in all cases. These were painstaking inventions, also by trial and error, of mankind, and were the work of many hands and are still evolving. This is what makes piffle out of the ignorant creationist sneer, which compares evolution to a whirlwind blowing through a junkyard of parts and coming up with a jumbo jet. For a start, there are no parts lying around waiting to be assembled. For another thing, the process of acquisition and discarding of parts, most especially wings, is as far from a whirlwind as could conceivably be. The time involved is more like that of a glacier than a storm. For still another thing, jumbo jets are not riddled with non-working or superfluous parts lamely inherited from less successful aircraft. Why have we agreed so easily to call this exploded old non-theory by its cunningly chosen new disguise of intelligent design? There's nothing at all intelligent about it. It is the same old mumbo-jumbo, or in this instance, jumbo-mumbo. Airplanes are, in their human-designed way, evolving, and so, in a quite different way, are we. In early April 2006, a long study at the University of Oregon was published in the journal Science. Based on the reconstruction of ancient genes from extinct animals, the researchers were able to show how the non-theory of irreducible complexity is a joke. Protein molecules, they found, slowly employed trial and error, reusing and modifying existing parts, to act in a key and lock manner and switch discrepant hormones on and off. This genetic march was blindly inaugurated 450 million years ago, before life left the ocean and before the evolution of bones. We now know things about our nature that the founders of religion could not even begin to guess at, and that would have stilled their overconfident tongues if they had known of them. Yet again, once one has disposed of superfluous assumptions, speculation about who designed us to be designers becomes as fruitless and irrelevant as the question of who designed that designer. Aristotle, whose reasoning about the unmoved mover and the uncaused cause is the beginning of this argument, concluded that the logic would necessitate 47 or 55 gods. Surely even a monotheist would be grateful for Occam's razor at this point. From a plurality of prime movers, the monotheists have bargained it down to a single one. They are getting ever nearer to the true round figure. We must also confront the fact that evolution is, as well as smarter than we are, infinitely more callous and cruel and also capricious. Investigation of the fossil record and the record of molecular biology shows us that approximately 98% of all the species that have ever appeared on Earth have lapsed into extinction. There have been extraordinary periods of life explosion, invariably succeeded by great dyings out. In order for life to take hold at all on a cooling planet, it had first to occur with fantastic profusion. We have a micro-glimpse of this in our little human lives. Men produce infinitely more seminal fluid than is required to build a human family, and are tortured, not completely unpleasantly, by the urgent need to spread it all over the place or otherwise get rid of it. Religions have needlessly added to the torture by condemning various simple means of relieving this presumably designed pressure. The exuberant, teeming variety of insect life, or sparrow or salmon or codfish life, is a titanic waste that ensures, in some but not all cases, that there will be enough survivors. The higher animals are hardly exempt from this process. The religions that we know of have, for self-evident reasons, also emerged from peoples that we know of. And in Asia and the Mediterranean and the Middle East, the human record is traceable back for an impressively long and continuous period of time. However, even the religious myths mention periods of darkness and plague and calamity, when it seemed that nature had turned against human existence. The folk memory, now confirmed by archaeology, makes it seem highly probable that huge inundations occurred when the Black Sea and the Mediterranean were formed, and that these forbidding and terrifying events continued to impress the storytellers of Mesopotamia and elsewhere. Every year, Christian fundamentalists renew their expeditions to Mount Ararat in modern Armenia, convinced that one day they will discover the wreckage of Noah's Ark. This effort is futile, and would prove nothing even if it were successful. But if these people should chance to read the reconstructions of what really did happen, they would find themselves confronted with something far more memorable than the banal account of Noah's flood: a sudden massive wall of dark water roaring across a thickly populated plain. This Atlantis event would have adhered to the prehistoric memory all right, as indeed it does to ours. However, we do not even possess a buried or ill-chronicled memory of what happened to most of our fellow humans in the Americas. When the Catholic Christian conquistadors arrived in the Western Hemisphere in the early 16th century AD, they behaved with such indiscriminate cruelty and destructiveness that one of their number, Bartolomeo de las Casas, actually proposed a formal renunciation and apology, and an acknowledgment that the whole enterprise had been a mistake. Well-intentioned as he may have been, he based his bad conscience on the idea that the Indians had been living in an undisturbed Eden, and that Spain and Portugal had missed their chance of rediscovering the innocence that had predated the fall of Adam and Eve. This was wishful piffle and also extreme condescension. The Olmec and other tribes had gods of their own, mainly propitiated by human sacrifice, and had also developed elaborate systems of writing, astronomy, agriculture, and trade. They wrote down their history and had discovered a 365-day calendar that was more accurate than its European counterparts. One particular society, the Mayan, had also managed to come up with that beautiful concept of zero, to which I alluded earlier, and without which mathematical computation is very difficult. It may be significant that the papacy of the Middle Ages always resisted the idea of zero as alien and heretical, perhaps because of its supposedly Arab, in fact Sanskrit origin, but perhaps...
I mean, imagine opposing the number zero. And I feel like there is a case to be made that I mean, I don't know. I don't even want to kick a dead horse, but it's like the history of which religion has just opposed almost every single incremental step that we've made along this actual march of progress in terms of our sort of cumulative empirical knowledge, including, you know, wiping it out at times when, you know, destroying certain cultures. But, you know, it's just really unbelievable that we still have this same thing happening now. I don't mean to overstate it, but it does genuinely like creep me out. Like it makes me feel weird and a bit sad and odd, certainly uncomfortable.
Perhaps also because it contained a frightening possibility. Something is known of the civilizations of the American Isthmus, but until very recently we were unaware of the vast cities and networks that once stretched across the Amazon basin and some regions of the Andes. Serious work has only just begun on the study of these impressive societies, which grew and flourished when Moses and Abraham and Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha were being revered, but which took no part at all in those arguments, and were not included in the calculations of the monotheistic faithful. It is a certainty that these people, too, had their creation myths and their revelations of the divine will, for all the good it did them. But they suffered and triumphed and expired without ever being in our prayers, and they died out in the bitter awareness that there would be nobody to remember them as they had been, or even as if they had been. All their promised lands and prophecies and cherished legends and ceremonies might as well have occurred on another planet. This is how arbitrary human history actually is. There seems to be little or no doubt that these peoples were annihilated not just by human conquerors, but by microorganisms, of which neither they nor their invaders had any knowledge. These germs may have been indigenous, or they may have been imported, but the effect was the same. Here again one sees the gigantic man-made fallacy that informs our Genesis story. How can it be proven in one paragraph that this book was written by ignorant men and not by any god? Because man is given dominion over all beasts, fowl and fish. But no dinosaurs or plesiosaurs or pterodactyls are specified because the authors did not know of their existence, let alone of their supposedly special and immediate creation. Nor are any marsupials mentioned because Australia, the next candidate after Mesoamerica for a new Eden, was not on any known map. Most important, in Genesis, man is not awarded dominion over germs and bacteria because the existence of these necessary yet dangerous fellow creatures was not known or understood, and if it had been known or understood, it would at once have become apparent that these forms of life had dominion over us and would continue to enjoy it, uncontested, until the priests had been elbowed aside and medical research at last given an opportunity. Even today, the balance between Homo sapiens and Louis Pasteur's invisible army of microbes is by no means.
This is a point that cannot be overstated, and it's something that I sort of started saying as soon as I started seeing our response to COVID as just, that's not how viruses work. And this is the type of thing what I mean when I say that this stuff really scares me. It's because it's like there's a certain degree to which I don't know how to take a person. Like there's funny, there's okay, I think you're weird, okay, you know, you and I don't agree with each other. But when there's, oh, this thing could kill you and you don't take that seriously, man, it's just, I'm like, how far off the reservation are you? And I really think that when I hear people talking about how our human limits have been tested And, oh, I just can't take any more of this. Oh, I'm just fed up with this thing. I just can't take any more. I'm not going to deal with this. It's like, that's not how viruses work. You know? And I don't know. I guess like like I said, I feel fortunate to have the training I have and to be in the position that I'm in. But it really does make me feel like, man, our needs to educate people are so critical. But at the same time, it's like if that's where you're at, like that's just not very smart. And I think we got to tell people that so that they can try to do better. But I guess what I'm saying is we got to encourage them to do better and stop letting it be okay to still have this. We got to really start to treat these people like they're flat earthers, in my opinion.
Means decided. But DNA has at least enabled us to sequence the genome of our lethal rivals, like the avian flu virus, and to elucidate what we have in common. Probably the most daunting task that we face as partly rational animals with adrenal glands that are too big and prefrontal lobes that are too small is the contemplation of our own relative weight in the scheme of things. Our place in the cosmos is so unimaginably small that we cannot, with our miserly endowment of cranial matter, contemplate it for long at all. No less difficult is the realization that we may also be quite random as presences on Earth. We may have learned about our modest position on the scale, about how to prolong our lives, cure ourselves of disease, learn to respect and profit from other tribes and other animals, and employ rockets and satellites for ease of communication, but then the awareness that our death is coming and will be succeeded by the death of the species and the heat death of the universe is scant comfort. Still, at least we are not in the position of those humans who died without ever having the chance to tell their story, or who are dying today at this moment after a few bare, squirming minutes of painful and fearful existence. In 1909, a discovery of immense importance was made in the Canadian Rockies on the border of British Columbia. It is known as the Burgess Shale, and though it is a natural formation and has no magical properties, it is almost like a time machine or a key that enables us to visit the past. The very remote past. This limestone quarry came into existence about 570 million years ago and records what paleontologists familiarly call the Cambrian explosion. Just as there have been great dyings and extinctions during evolutionary time, so there have been energetic moments when life was suddenly profuse and various again. An intelligent designer might have managed without these chaotic episodes of boom and bust. Most of the surviving modern animals have their origins in this grand Cambrian burgeoning, but until 1909 we were unable to view them in anything like their original habitat. Until then also, we had to rely upon the evidence mainly of bones and shells, whereas the Burgess Shale contains much fossilized soft anatomy, including the contents of digestive systems. It is a sort of Rosetta Stone for the decoding of life.
Hello there, Satan's little helper.
Our own solipsism, often expressed in diagram or cartoon
Thank you
form,
for joining me.
usually represents evolution as a kind of ladder or progression, with a fish gasping on the shore in the first frame, hunched and prognathous figures in the succeeding ones, and then by slow degrees, an erect man in a suit waving his umbrella and shouting, "Taxi!" Even those who have observed the sawtooth pattern of fluctuation between emergence and destruction, further emergence and still further destruction, and who have already charted the eventual end of the universe, are half agreed that there is a stubborn tendency toward an upward progression. This is no great surprise. Inefficient creatures will either die out or be destroyed by more successful ones. But progress does not negate the idea of randomness, and when he came to examine the Burgess Shale, the great paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould arrived at the most disquieting and unsettling conclusion of all. He examined the...
It's the whole thing where... Sorry, I think that was the wrong mic. I muted the wrong mic. It's the whole thing where any sort of piece of evidence we come up with, it's like taking that, go, oh, well, yeah, and that proves my God. Oh, yeah, and that proves my God. And that's why it's so, again, for me, I think the real takeaway of why this book is so important to me, but also Christopher Hitchens in general so important to me, is really, again, laying out the case not for atheism, although I'm certainly willing to agree that that's what he's primarily remembered for, but for me, with just a dash more nuance, to me, what Christopher Hitchens is really the best at is laying out the case for anti-theism.
Fossils and their development with minute care, and realized that if this tree could be replanted or this soup set boiling again, it would very probably not produce the same results that we now know. It may be worth mentioning that this conclusion was no more welcome to Gould than it is to you or to me. In his youth he had imbibed a version of Marxism, and the concept of progress was real to him. But he was too scrupulous a scholar to deny the evidence that was so plainly displayed. And while some evolutionary biologists are willing to say that the millimetrical and pitiless process had a direction toward our form of intelligent life, Gould subtracted himself from their company. If the numberless evolutions from the Cambrian period could be recorded and rewound, as it were, and the tape then played again, he established there was no certainty that it would come out the same way. Several branches of the tree, a better analogy would be with small twigs on an extremely dense bush, end up going nowhere, but given another start, they might have blossomed and flourished, just as some that did blossom and flourish might equally well have withered and died. We all appreciate that our nature and existence is based upon our being vertebrate. The earliest known vertebrate.
Yeah, that's two really good points. So, I don't think that point can be overstated, which is that even if a believer happened to be somehow lucky enough to be in alignment with the truth, the method by which they got there would still be so flawed. It would, you'd be coincidentally right, but certainly for the all the wrong reasons. And yeah, and that's kind of the problem with me with what Satan's Little Helper was saying, which is that like if you're gonna take the approach of even wanting people to consider things evidence, then to me, then that means you're obligated yourself to make an assessment of the evidence. Like, okay, if you're willing to say whatever you got as your evidence, well, then what about all of this other evidence that you keep ignoring? And so that, renders the person, of course, in our opinion, wrong, but incredibly hypocritical, even going beyond that.
Or caudate, located in the Burgess Shale, is a 2-inch and rather elegant creature named after an adjoining mountain and also for its sinuous beauty, Picaia gracilens. It was originally and wrongly classified as a worm. One must never forget how recent most of our knowledge really is. But in its segments, muscularity, and dorsal rod flexibility, it is a necessary ancestor that yet demands no worship. Millions of other life forms perished before the Cambrian period was over, but this little prototype survived. To quote Gould, "Wind the tape of time back to Burgess times, and let it play again. If Picaia does not survive in the replay, we are wiped out of future history, all of us, from shark to robin to orangutan." And I don't think that any handicapper, given Burgess evidence as known today, would have granted very favourable odds for the persistence of Picaia. And so, if you wish to ask the question of the ages, why do humans exist? A major part of the answer, touching those aspects of the issue that science can treat at all, must be because Picaia survived the Burgess decimation. This response does not cite a single law of nature. It embodies no statement about predictable evolutionary pathways, no calculation of probabilities based on general rules of anatomy or ecology. The survival of Picaia was a contingency of just history. I do not think that any higher answer can be given, and I cannot imagine that any resolution could be more fascinating. We are the offspring of history, and must establish our own paths in this most diverse and interesting of conceivable universes, one indifferent to our suffering, and therefore offering us maximum freedom to thrive or to fail in our own chosen way.
The offspring of history. This was really important stuff by Stephen Jay Gould. My dissertation is actually inspired by the book that this is from, Wonderful Life. And I wrote a lot about this in a sort of philosophical chapter that I wrote in the introduction to my dissertation. I might actually share that on stream at some point, but I'm trying to figure out what to do with that manuscript. I don't want to get too much into it now, but yeah, it's definitely really important stuff to evolutionary theory. This idea that there's all of these unpredictable events in the past, and they have unpredictable consequences. We call that like sort of historical contingency. Some people in the counter-apologetics are familiar with the sort of theological arguments from contingency, but Stephen Jay Gould is famous for historical contingency in the evolutionary sense.
A way chosen, one must add, within very strictly defined limits. Here is the cool, authentic voice of a dedicated scientist and humanist. In a dim way, we knew all this already. Chaos theory has familiarized us with the idea of the unscripted butterfly wing flap that, stirring a tiny zephyr, eventuates in a raging typhoon. Saul Bellows' Augie March shrewdly observed the fritillary corollary that, if you hold down one thing, you hold down the adjoining. And Gould's mind-stunning but mind-opening book on the Burgess Shale is entitled Wonderful Life.
I appreciate the feedback.
A double entendre with an echo of the best-loved of all American sentimental movies. At the climax of this engaging but abysmal film, Jimmy Stewart wishes that he'd never been born, but is then shown by an angel what the world would be like if his wish had been granted. A middlebrow audience is thus given a vicarious glimpse of a version of Heisenberg's principle of uncertainty. Any attempt to measure something will have the effect of minutely altering that which is being measured. We've only recently established that a cow is closer in family to a whale than to a horse. Other wonders certainly await us. If our presence here in our present form is indeed random and contingent, then at least we can consciously look forward to the further evolution of our poor brains and to stupendous advances in medicine and life extension, derived from work on our elementary stem cells and umbilical cord blood cells. In the steps of Darwin, Peter and Rosemary Grant of Princeton University have gone for the past 30 years to the Galapagos Islands, lived in the arduous conditions of the tiny island of Daphne Major, and actually watched and measured the way that finches evolved and adapted as their surroundings changed. They have shown conclusively that the size and shape of the finches' beaks would adjust themselves to drought and scarcity, by adaptation to the size and character of different seeds and beetles. Not only could the 3-million-year-old original flock change in one way, but if the beetle and seed situation changed back, their beaks could follow suit. The Grants took care, and they saw it happening, and could publish their findings and proofs for all to see. We are in their debt. Their lives were harsh, but who could wish that they had mortified themselves in a holy cave or on top of a sacred pillar instead? In 2005, a team of researchers at the University of Chicago conducted serious work on two genes known as microcephalin and ASPM that, when disabled, are the cause of microcephaly. Babies born with this condition have a shrunken cerebral cortex, quite probably an occasional reminder of the period when the human brain was very much smaller than it is now. The evolution of humans has been generally thought to have completed itself about 50 to 60,000 years ago, an instant in evolutionary time. Yet those two genes have apparently been evolving faster in the past 37,000 years, raising the possibility that the human brain is a work in progress. In March 2006, further work at the same university revealed that there are some 700 regions of the human genome where genes have been reshaped by natural selection within the past 5,000 to 15,000 years. These genes include some of those responsible for our senses of taste and smell, digestion, bone structure, skin color, and brain function. One of the great emancipating results of genomics is to show that all racial and color differences are recent.
I'm just having such a hard time imagining how people overlook all this.
It is a moral certainty that between the time I finish writing this book and the time that it is published, several more fascinating and enlightening discoveries will be made in this burgeoning field.
Seriously.
It may be too soon to say that all the progress is positive or upward, but human development is still underway. It shows in the manner in which we acquire immunities and also in the way in which we do not. Genome studies have identified early groups of northern Europeans who learned to domesticate cattle and acquired a distinct gene for lactose tolerance, while some people of more recent African descent, we all originate from Africa, are prone to a form of sickle cell anemia which, while upsetting in and of itself, results from an earlier mutation that gave protection against malaria. And all this will be further clarified if we are modest and patient enough to understand the building blocks of nature and the lowly stamp of our origins. No divine plan, let alone angelic intervention, is required. Everything works without that assumption. Thus, though I dislike to differ with such a great man, Voltaire was simply ludicrous when he said that if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him.
Certainly.
The human invention of God is the problem to begin with. Our evolution...
Although, I kind of wonder in the sense that, I guess at some point, I don't think there is a God, and I guess at some point I feel like humans did need to invent him.
Has been examined backward, with life temporarily outpacing extinction and knowledge now at last capable of reviewing and explaining ignorance.
God is too small
Religion,
for the
it is
cosmos.
true, still possesses the huge, if cumbersome and unwieldy advantage of having come first. But, as Sam Harris states rather pointedly in The End of Faith, If we lost all our hard-won knowledge and all our archives and all our ethics and morals in some Marquez-like fit of collective amnesia and had to reconstruct everything essential from scratch, it is difficult to imagine at what point we would need to remind or reassure ourselves that Jesus was born of a virgin. Thoughtful believers can take some consolation too. Skepticism and discovery have freed them from the burden of having to defend their God as a footling, clumsy, straws-in-the-hair mad scientist, and also from having to answer distressing questions about who inflicted the syphilis bacillus, or mandated the leper, or the idiot child, or devised the torments of Job. The faithful stand acquitted on that charge. We no longer have any need of a God to explain what is no longer mysterious. What believers will do, now that their faith is optional and private and irrelevant, is a matter for them. We should not care, as long as they make no further attempt to inculcate religion by any form of coercion.
All right, folks. We did it. We made it. This was super fun. I'm thankful for those of you that watched, whether you watched now, later, or never, whenever works for you, works for me. Folks, it's been a super fun weekend. I have been fortunate enough to, be able to do 3 shows this weekend, Late-Night Counter-Apologetics, where we talked about Rebecca and her recent appearance on Searching for Truth. We did Hot Program with MyOneBlack Friend. We interviewed Staten. That was a super great time, and we just finished up with Chapter 6 of Christopher Hitchens, and of course we'll be back next weekend for the next chapter. I am going to try to stick with my schedule of doing an after party after these broadcasts. One of my club members had asked me to play some games with them for a little bit, so I'm going to switch back over to PlayStation and see what those guys are up to. So what I'm going to do is, I think with the way I'm set up over here now, is I can just end this particular broadcast. I will what will I do here? I think I just press I'll just turn off the Jay Bundy machine, and then I'll just remain live on Pocketlocker86. So if you're on the Jay Bundy YouTube channel and you want to stay live with me, please head over to Pocketlocker86. Otherwise, if you're on Pocketlocker86, just sit tight after I close the show, and I will start the after show probably about a minute or two afterwards. So thank you. Yep. After the party, it's the after party. Exactly. All right. Did y'all have a good time? Because if you enjoyed the stream, you ought to praise the fly man. Woo! I feel the spirit of doubt in this place today. I don't think you've been doubting your doubt enough. I think we need to go higher and higher and higher into doubt, into more doubt, into greater doubt, into less and less and less and less belief. Okay? Say this with me. We walk by sight and not by faith. Sight. You can't see well. Contact lenses. Corrective glasses. Sight. You can't believe me. You get it? You can't believe me. All right, look. I love y'all. Be safe. Don't not do drugs. All that good stuff. What do I want to hang on, look y'all. Look, I'm gonna leave y'all with the treat. In honor of Christopher Hitchens, I want to leave y'all with somebody who has some very inspirational words to say. Somebody who really, I think, is going to say some things that are really going to make you think. So be prepared for this intellectual gem.
You kind of caught me off guard here. Okay. Now, thank you, Lord. Let me put it very simple. It takes a lot of money to do what we do. Oh, yeah. Well, for example, that's really none of your business. But, hey, you listening to me? Let me give you another example. And I prayed about it, and I thought, back when, and I might add another thing, too. It's a misunderstanding. I'm talking about the Bible. God, I get excited.
I love it so much.
I had to learn this, the demons. Abraham was very, very wealthy. I learned it from him, from the Bible.
There's a foundation in the Bible.
There's a foundation in the Bible.
Blessing
definitely.
of Abraham.
Look.
Abraham
oh my God.
was extreme.
That's so good.
And he had a covenant with God. I'm talking about the Bible. Oh, God, I love this. And I started out standing on grandfathers.
Oh, I needed this.
I love the people. Those are the demons. And I understand them, and I love them with all my heart. If you go into the old covenant, and it's full of meanness, it's just full of hell on earth. He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it. I love your eyes. Face to face, personally. Just the same as Jesus is very real devil. Rulers of the darkness of this world. God bless, Father bless. But it's a biblical thing. It's a spiritual thing. It doesn't have anything to do with people. And it's full of miracles, and signs, and wonders.
Miracles
unseen
and signs and wonders. Wonders.
I love people. Dragging some woman down an aisle, it made me so mad I wanted to punch the guy out myself. We wrestle not with people. And I have a lot of natural gas.
Now listen, you atheist YouTube perverts. It's been a long weekend. We really appreciate all you guys watching us. The conclusion is that, believe it or not, even though you're an atheist, you still need Jesus. Why? Because atheism, this is not good. This making fun of religious people thing, y'all really need to stop that. Y'all really need to stop that. Jesus is going to punish you. We'll be at the after party. Come to the after party, because only losers go home after the party. Cool kids go to the after party. Obviously. Duh. You should have known that. You'd have known that if you wasn't such a dork. Stop being a dork. Bye.
Please, may I have your attention for a very important announcement. Pocketlocker has left the building!